This came with a lot of diversity in terms of stuff that we were doing. So of course apps and stuff, but then also things that are embedded in the car, tangible interfaces, maps that guide airplanes or pilots in the airplane to the airport where they want to go. This is a park, some visual dashboard stuff and so on. And we said, well, as a designer, you should specialize in something, but we didn't want to specialize in brand or experience or whatever. So we thought, why don't we specialize in enterprise-people relationships? So really appreciating that there's some enterprise and there are people around and in that enterprise, and we want to have a positive impact on the relationships between the two. And this is the website of the Paris airport, and for those that you don't know, there are two airports in Paris. You don't have any clue on that. Well, you have the two airports here, but it's a little hidden. And this website actually has been designed with user experience principles in mind. So you can get information on a flight, and you can get to the airport, which are the two top tasks that the people that make the user experience design have identified. So in theory, that's fine. I'm not sure why you have this, but OK. The actual passenger experience or traveler experience is something entirely different. So this is a journey for myself going from Paris to Prague. So I Googled Prague, was never there, so tried to get some maps, tried to understand the local transport system, trying to find my hotel. I used the EasyJet mobile app because I flew with EasyJet, the EasyJet website, of course. In Paris, you have to use this to get to the airport, which is an old and strange device, and so on. And I actually never went to the Paris airport website. So basically, what happened then is that I arrived at the airport in this check-in hall and learned that the flight was cancelled. And you get this nice feeling that despite of all the stuff, all the apps, all this intelligence and everyone throwing like apps and websites and stuff at you, including Google and so on, nobody either cared to tell you or was able to tell you. So, and it has to do with complexity. This whole system is really, really large and complex, and I can't even count all the companies that are involved in delivering this kind of overall service of getting to A to B. It's the airport itself, but then it's also the city. And the problem that occurred, this is really not very visible, but this is actually many, many flights that are happening over Europe. And perhaps the problem occurred somewhere there in this larger system of airplanes flying around and having dependencies between each other. And it's really hard to predict what happens in such a system. So if we look at a typical commercial enterprise, we often see this kind of pattern. Public enterprises seem to look some little different, but overall, while we like this term, and I know that not everybody likes the term enterprise, or it has some connotations like large and boring and doesn't work and so on. But what's really cool about the term is that you have somebody in the middle, and that somebody might be an organization, might be also a founder of a startup or something. And this person has some kind of cool idea and some willingness to undertake something, take risks, and try to make something, which is, for example, building an airport or making an app, or I don't know what your enterprise is, depends on who you are. So you have this in the middle, and then you have around everyone you need to do that. And inside, of course, too, so you have your people. In large enterprises, we see this thing a lot. And you have to work with suppliers, investors. You have to reach your customers also. You have to work with partners and so on. And the enterprise actually is happening around you. So if you don't engage your ecosystem, then you have no enterprise. So basically, the ecosystem is the enterprise. And the problem with design work in a traditional way, if you are engaged to, I don't know, to work on the brand or on the mobile app or on the intranet or I don't know what, you are one of these little colorful dots, and you might, like the Paris airport website, solve that individual problem. But if nobody actually visits your website, then you don't actually solve any problem. And in order to do something on an enterprise level, you have to try this. And this is really, really hard. So we have to design something that involves everyone involved in or impacted by your enterprise. You have to deliver something to the customers, of course, as, for example, a service, but then you have to engage the organization to deliver the service. You have to work with the partners. You are depending on, like, perhaps Dropbox or Google or I don't know who. You have to get money for that. You have to work with the suppliers, get the supply chain right, and so on. And so on. So, some examples of what happens if you don't do it. So this is a video from Ogilvy, where they talk about big data, and they mess up all sorts of trends, like I don't know, touch interfaces and social media and so on. And they, well, the vision basically, this is just a still, but here you get a cupcake for checking in, I think. This is not service design. This is just, you know, throwing a cupcake at someone. This can't be it. This is an example from my personal life. I'm in Paris. I'm using the Velib, which is the free bike system, bike rental system, a lot. This is the app on the Windows Phone. You start it. It shows you the bikes overall in Paris, which is completely useless because I won't walk here to get the 4 bikes there. So you have to zoom in, zoom in, zoom in. And I'm working in this area, and actually it's on a hill. So when I zoom in, normally I get this 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Because everyone takes bikes, goes down the hill, and nobody takes a bike to go up. This is, so my user experience, or my service experience, or my brand experience, whatever you call it, is flawed because the operational aspect of distributing the bikes to the places where they need to be is not solved. So this is a problem that we have to face. Nobody else will. The other way around, you might look at your operations like Amazon did and say, wow, we have all these crazy servers and infrastructure lying around. And well, actually, initially we thought we might be a bookshop, even though they never actually said that they were only a bookshop. But why don't we actually sell this? This might be great. So they launched a different line of business and are selling cloud computing stuff. So you might find in your operations inspiration for new services, for new business models, and so on. And this is why we think it's so important to look at business architecture, because it's the business architects who are specializing in doing exactly that, looking at the operations 360 degrees and identifying sweet spots for making things better or inventing new things. And this is particularly true as in the world that we are now in, where we know everything about everyone all the time. We have all these sensors, and what also happens is that our customers are actually there. They are standing there, and if they don't like us, they will tweet it into the world and destroy our business. So we really have to learn how to do that. So what's business architecture?
I get asked every day, what is business architecture and why do we need it? So Milan mentioned complexity up front. I kind of get paid to bring simplicity. So I kind of get paid to bring order to all the chaos. So if you imagine that I could walk into a business and I've got 17 versions of product. In fact, no one really knows what product is. In fact, it's actually a service, not a product. And we've designed our whole business around the fact that we are products, and now no one actually uses us correctly. Who's using the same business processes? Are we using the same systems? Are we using, hang on, who is the customer? What is a customer and how is it categorized and how do we use it? If you imagine I'm the old-fashioned city planner, so I'm the guy that creates the ecosystem, that defines everything that lives in it and where it belongs, and then defines that 360 view. So what is a business architect? My mum and dad ask me that all the time as well. And they go to parties and they try and define, you know, being proud of their son and what does he do? I get all sorts. Oh, he's in IT, it's fine. Don't worry about that. But the reality is, I kind of help people see. That's my job. A business is like a cube. So the reality of the fact is that everybody wants a different question answered from different perspectives of the business. The reality is it's the same content. They've just got a different need for it. Or, you know, regulatory, you know, are we in control? What products do we sell? Ooh, what can I use operationally to turn into a process that I could sell as a service? So how do I do that when I've got all these different versions of the truth? There's a fine line between success and failure in strategy. So my other role, in terms of the reason I exist, is to help strategy not make the wrong decisions, as in understand the impact of their choice even before it happens. Because I actually understand how everything is connected to everything. Everything is well described. So even to the point where I have a standard product catalog with descriptions and meanings, so everybody can reuse them rather than recreate every time. So you actually move away from this project mentality that exists in businesses. People hire you for an engagement, and then what happens after that? They hire you again in a year's time, and you're going, right, let's define your service again. Or let's define your product, and you're going, hang on, I paid for this a year ago. Why haven't you been maintaining it, and why haven't you used the same language? This is very contentious. So in my view of the world, the business and IT is actually one organization. Unfortunately, for the right or wrong reasons, IT call the business in quotes, and it's almost like IT is its own industry and its own company inside an organization. I operate like a Babel fish, if you like, so I'm one of the few business architects that can speak both languages. So I also have a technical background, but I also have a 80% more business background. So I can actually tell when they're telling me lies. I don't let on, but I know that, but it's kind of useful skill. But the point is, I can make sure that whatever's being designed technically actually meets the needs of what the business actually want. And IT now move away from being the innovators to more the delivery people, and then offer us possible opportunities for change that we weren't aware of based on what's in our IT real estate, but they're not driving everything. We're actually making sure we're all speaking the same language. IT systems are no longer described by what they're called, but what they do. So business people actually go, oh yeah, the general ledger system. Oh yes, we've got 5 of those. Not it's called Jeff and it's on a server somewhere and no one knows what it's called. So this is the other thing. So I also provide a toolbox to the organization. I provide them a set of standards. I define them a set of methods. Methodologies was used earlier. So I provide them the methodologies, the standards, the bricks of the business to actually enable themselves. So my job is not to force things on people. I don't get them to come in at 9 o'clock and you do at 9:05, you do this, and that's not right. The business, like any city, should emerge. But I give you the bricks to enable that emergence. So using those bricks, we end up creating the stockroom of the business. Now, if you speak to an architect, they'll call this a repository. It's effectively the stockroom. So everything is nicely catalogued, but everything is related together. So it means that whenever I finish a project, it doesn't go back on the shelf. It gets enriched and it gets put back in. So it means that the business is evolving and emerging. So everything is connected to everything, which means now I can report on things. So for example, how many processes do I actually have delivering a single capability? How much does that cost? What technology have I got to do this? What teams do this? What competencies do I have to deliver this? It's all consistent and it's all lined up as one roadmap. What no one really knows is that I'm making them walk the path that I wanted them to anyway. But the key is you put the path down and you make sure the standards are in place so they can follow. So using that stockroom, I can create any different viewpoint you like. So it becomes now applicable to your personality and where you sit in the organization, because it's the same content. I'm just presenting it to you differently. People use the content to create their business model. They start to understand all those connections, but then they can look at perspectives of the business model. So if I'm a process owner, show me my business process in the context of that. Where are my control points? Where's my data? How does that come in? What roles do I perform? You're in human resources. Where are the competencies needed to deliver that role? and so on and so on. So all of a sudden your city starts to emerge. And then when someone's done, they don't put it on the bookshelf and go, tick in a box, we've passed audit, everything's there, we're good. It actually goes back. So then the city keeps on emerging and the business starts growing. So the value, there's a few things. We can start planning more efficiently, even though that's physically impossible today almost, because things do emerge and things are changing. But the key is we know the impact of change. So although we have a goal in mind, the steps getting there are probably going to be very fluid, because external things happen to us, or even our internal corporate culture makes us change. But the good thing is we can actually see our business from a 360-degree perspective, looking down at a helicopter view, but enabling us to drill in to understand where the impacts actually are. But the key is we also get a common language. So no longer are IT speaking their own language and the business is speaking their own language, but we also allow for local variance, because different parts of the business may have their own local language, which we allow for. But again, it's all contained in one place. Sounds great, doesn't it? I was sold. But there's a big gaping hole in what I've just said. So I've just described to you all the moving connections of an organization. I kind of didn't say customer anywhere, did I? So business architecture mentions customer, but it doesn't tell me how they feel. It doesn't actually tell me that I've actually got the right capabilities that people want. How do I actually know what the customer impacts are when I change my business process? How do I actually know that people actually want the channels that I'm giving them and the experiences they desire? And failing all of that, are we actually selling the right stuff? So there's clearly a gap.
All right. So how do we combine this stuff? We found when trying to make our enterprise design idea come to life that the most interesting stuff is at the intersection between different modes of thinking. So we have those business architects. I was at the Enterprise Architecture Conference, and it's called Enterprise Architecture, but you know, it's like interaction design and service design. Yeah, nobody knows really what's the difference. But some know and some don't. You know. But we were at this conference, and I learned about all of that, and I thought, okay, how can we perhaps integrate all of that and look at the intersections? And after a few of these exercises, this is actually what emerged as our toolkit, which is the Enterprise Design Framework, where we have a collection of 20 aspects that we tend to look at in projects and programs, like the identity, the brand, the overall architecture, the experience as the strategic issues, all the moving parts like the services, the touch points, who are the actors, and so on. All the different ways you can look at stuff from a people perspective, a business perspective, a systems perspective. Everything where you need to make decisions in. And this is the classic user experience stuff like interaction and information, but then also stuff like operational matters, organization, and technology. Technology gets angry because technology is only there, but we think from a design perspective, it is actually something that you can either use or develop in order to make a great experience happen, for example. And then very importantly, and this is what the business architecture people perhaps most lack, is the rendering of the enterprise in actual, I think in service design it's called evidence. So things that people can see and use and places where they can go. So we also use this framework to make teams. Like for every project, looking at what might be important, what might be relevant, and who might be higher. And normally you find that the service designer also has an industrial design background. The enterprise architecture also knows about process. The interaction designer has an experience with different stakeholders, and so on. So the teams do not match exactly the disciplines, and the disciplines are not as separate as they might have appeared first.
So yeah, so the important message is then you actually get, my gap gets filled. So I now get outside in and inside out alignment. So actually I get the needs of the customer coming in and the delivery comes on from the inside. So someone mentioned in the talk earlier that you can't map human emotion. That's correct. But I can map types of emotion and I can put them into categories. And I can map types of emotion that support a specific product, which has its own category. I can map channels as categories, which support a specific product type. I can map a need that someone has in their life, and I can map that to a product I sell. All of a sudden, all my processes now deliver that product, and I have capabilities then that support all of those products. I now have a value chain. So now I just click a button in a report and I say, okay, you tell me what needs I've got that my customers need to fulfill, what products support that, what technology underpins it, and what experiences and brand perceptions I have that meet it. And what's our value proposition for those products. So all of a sudden I have now connected the whole thing. So now it becomes a Rubik's Cube. So now I can actually take all of this information, spin it, and look at it from different perspectives depending on where you are in the organization. But the key is now, I can now drive more strategic initiatives, because now I'm not looking inwardly, I'm actually looking about what my customers want. So basically I'm looking at the promise that we give as a brand, either be it from the enterprise or from the things we sell, and how does that map to their perception of our brand? And are we meeting that? Because any gaps in that will result strategically in an influence into something that we need to do next year as a roadmap strategic item. But the key is we move away from projects. And the key wrapper around it all is information. So if you go out and do a service design workshop, I'll give you the Lego that you need to use. You can use your creative mindsets then to actually piece all that together. Because the old argument has always been from IT and architects is, that's great, I love what you've done, but they aren't the terms of the business. And I have absolutely no idea how to implement what you've just given me. You've made my business look really sexy in PowerPoint, but they're not the terms that I know. They're not the terms that the business owners know. So by giving you the Lego that you need to design your blueprint, that then gets handed over but connected like glue. Because I've given you the right people, I've given you the services we sell, I've given you the processes that we use at a certain level, and then they go back in. And then the people who actually run the processes maintain that process view. So then in a year's time, you come back and go, well, how's your service getting on? We changed everything in terms of how your bank runs. Let's see if we can refine that, rather than let's define how the whole bank looks again, or let's define how this looks again. We now start getting into reuse. And this is the other aspect. So now we actually look at the human being or the customer from a 360-degree perspective. So now I actually look at the analytical world, which is how the business looks at the outside world, which is trends, analysis, forecasts, market evaluations, capabilities of the organization, and our brand strategy. That sounds great. But on the right then, I have someone on the customer side who has some form of desires, some emotional aspirations. They need some form of interaction, and they have a brand identity, so they have a perception of you as an organization. If you lock it all together, you then start to look at your customer in a 360-degree view. Obviously, there are more linkages, but this is just an example.
All right, some of you might know this, a service blueprint for an event, and it's from Adaptive Path some time ago. And we said, okay, if we want to make something like this, but using an integrated view between service design and business architecture, how could it look like? So you recognize the little icons from our framework. So we would say that still it's about an alignment between the business delivery and enablement and the customer needs and interaction and experience. So we think that essentially an experience cannot be represented in a neutral way. It can only be a story. So here we have a story of John the early bird who wants to register for an event, and he stumbles upon it, he looks into details, he registers, he attends, he is making notes, exploring the city and so on. And he's doing that in his role, which is different from the persona. The role is basically only the role he plays, like I'm a presenter, you're the audience. As an event participant and all the touch points. And as the glue between this and the business delivery, we have the services from the organizational service line, perhaps of event management. And now we can look at what the different services do in order to get this service delivered to him, and how the business enables the services. And this is where the business architecture comes in.
Yeah, so we describe any business architecture book you'll read will say business capabilities. Start there, rubbish. Because how do we know we've got the right ones? So once we actually know these things, we can then start looking at what we've got and what we need to actually put in place. So I know across here, these are taken from the business architecture repository, because these are the things we sell. So I'm reusing those and giving them to you. So what I want to know then is, okay, so what are the high-level activities needed to actually deliver that service? So this is very high level, no variation, so I can see the high level. Then what capabilities does the organization possess, and where do they get used? Because one capability could be supported by however many processes in your organization. So we can see, we've got event management supporting a deliver the event activity, which realizes a managed event service. So now I've got full traceability. So now, over time, what you'll end up with, for every customer segment that you have in the organization, there will be a service blueprint for each segment. So no longer will I go to the business model to actually understand the impact of change. I'll go straight to the customer segment model and the service blueprint and go, actually, what's the customer impact? Oh, none. Okay, fine. Now I'll go and look at the operational blueprint and understand the impact there. But it means I can start understanding what I'm selling, where the gaps are, and how it's actually being leveraged consistently over time versus, like currently I'm at the Royal Mail, so they're using this for real. And then, it's part of the privatization. So there's a customer experience, but there's also a brand to protect. But they also don't want to think in project mode. As part of the business change, they want to say, this is all great, we've captured all of this, but we also want to manage. And we also want people to own all of this stuff, which is where this comes in.
So, I think we are out of time.
I'll be quick.
Okay.
So the only reason for showing this is that we then start designing the business around the experience. So we no longer become inwardly looking. We start understanding what the outside world wants. So we start to understand brand motivations. And as we said, they could be stored as categories of thing, which are retained in my stockroom but used to build other viewpoints. I can start building alignment with business needs, giving me full traceability, all the way through right down to technology. I can even understand reporting in terms of what I've got and where the gaps are. All the way through to focusing on the tasks customers need to achieve versus focusing on what we do. Because then I can spot gaps in terms of what we actually offer, in terms of understanding whether that's the right thing or not.
So we have a case study, if you think this is all a little bit abstract, from our work with the United Nations. So we take the model, the 20 aspects, we say, okay, we have this cube, which is really complex and which we don't really understand. And we create this cube by sitting with them in workshops and mapping, for example, the landscape of brands and so on, the capabilities that they have, the services that they provide, the product that they have. And then the story is basically about stealing, because we were stealing from the business architects the methods of putting all this into a business architecture tool where you can map things and the system will know the semantic connections and so on. And we can explore who is using what service to create for what value, what service adds to which KPI of the organization, what process delivers what service, what organization inside the UN is responsible for delivering what service, what part of the website is supporting which service, and so on. And we create a whole big mess in order to map all of that. And then we can take that map and make things like, I'm not going into the details, but let's say some kind of service blueprints or views on the model that are made in InDesign and not in this awful tool, so that people can look at it and perhaps understand what they are doing. So in this case, building awareness for a certain topic, guiding people, building capacity. It's actually about disaster prevention, which is really timely, and implementing stuff. We can take that and look at the different, for each service we can say, what if we did this like TED? What if we did it like Forrester? What if we did it like IDEO? Stealing from them, basically. And we can make prototypes, and for every little thing like the help desk, we can say, this is corresponding to service X delivered by that organizational unit and used by that customer for creating that experience. There's a book. I just will tweet in a second a 30% discount code. There is a conference if you are interested in strategic design. And this is us. Thank you.